So today I want to do a basic, simple 3D modeling for 3D printing with Blender. And I'm just going to keep it real simple. I picked the easiest item I could think of, which is this little bracket for a dry box. Basically what you do is you take two of them, you put a little tube across it, you hang your roll of filament, and I have mine in this little Rubbermaid food container, right? $8, super cheap. I put a little Bowden connector, drill a hole for a little Bowden connector, put some cheap Bowden tube straight to my 3D printer, and I'm good to go. Toss in some Deskin packets in there, close the lid, and it'll keep your filament nice and dry. So I'm going to show you how to make those, right? This is really, really simple. Oh, the other thing you might want to have is this. These are digital calipers. Now, this is Harbor Freight, which is known for their very middle-of-the-road tools. I bought several of these from them. They last about a year and a half before they start to fall apart. I would start with a cheap set till you decide you need better. Look, the 6-inch one is probably more than big enough for most 3D printing things you're going to need. You can get bigger, you can get smaller, you can pay more, you can pay less. I don't know if a more expensive Harbor Freight digital calipers equals a better digital calipers. I'm looking for a better middle-of-the-road priced calipers that will last me longer. I haven't found them yet. If I do, I'll add a link below, or I'll let you know somehow or other. Oh, the one other thing is, please take a look at my other video for changes I've made to Blender so that it plays nicer with 3D printing. There are a few things you have to alter so that your models will work out right. Take a look at that video. I'll put a link in the description too so you can find it easy. So let's get to modeling. So Blender has a million things going on, right? Look at all of these tabs, all of this stuff. There's a million things here. What the heck is going on? I'm basically going to say don't worry about most of it for right now. Start out slow, start out simple. Otherwise, your brain is going to explode because there's just too much information to retain at once. Let's just start out with what you need to get modeling, and then as you learn more, we'll go into some of the other tools as needed, right? So basically what we have here is we're in object mode. You can see that right up here. It says object mode. You can change modes in here, or you can hit tab to go into edit mode. Now in edit mode you can see what your object is made of. All these little points are called vertices, and 2 points that are connected are called an edge. This is called a face. Those are three very popular terms that you'll need to know, sort of. Okay, so what we have here is object mode. We're back in object mode, and up here in add under mesh you'll find your primitives. Now primitives are basically simple shapes that you can use as a base to create your models from. There are a bunch here. All of them are good. All of them you can use. 99.9% of my models start out as either a cube, a UV sphere, or a cylinder. I very rarely use any of the other shapes. Feel free to use them if they come in handy for you, but today we're just going to start out with a simple cylinder. Now, you can't see the cylinder because it's so large it's encompassing the entire scene. So what we're going to do is hit S for scale, and then I have a trackball, so I'm just going to roll it in until it comes into view. Right? Now I'm going to drag that over. Oh, and this is the 3D cursor, right? You move it by hitting Shift and right clicking. Now wherever that 3D cursor is where your new object is going to appear. I had it on the face of this other object because a lot of times if you click into 3D space, sometimes it'll put it back here, it'll put it higher or lower than you think, or left or whatever. If you put it on the surface of an object, you know that's where it's going to be. So now I'm going to hit 3 to go into side view. With the object selected, I'm going to hit R for rotate on my keyboard and then 90 on the numpad and enter. Now what we did now is we just rotated the object 90 degrees. So what I'm going to do now, and this is just for illustrative purposes, is I'm going to hit S for scale, Y to constrain to the Y-axis, and I'm going to change that just a little bit. So here you see the dimensions of our object, right? So we have an X, a Y, and a Z axis, and you can see that here represented by these. The Z is blue, and that's up and down. The red is X, and that's left and right, and the green is front and back. Now, because we rotated the object, Blender is a little confused. It still thinks, you can see here, two axes that are the same number will make it a circle. If one of these, the X or the Z, were different, we'd have an oval. So since they're the same, we can see that we have a circle. But Blender still is confused because we rotated the object. So we're going to hit Control A, and it'll bring this menu up. And what we're going to do is apply the rotation. And if you watch the dimensions, they have changed, right? They've swapped around because we've applied that rotation. So now I'm going to hit 7 to go into, to look at the items from above. Now I want to change the thickness of this. Now you can do that one of several ways. You can hit S, Y to constrain, to scale to the Y axis and move it in, or you can come over here and just hit 5 and enter on your numpad to get to 5 millimeters. Both are valid, neither is wrong, they both work great. Use whichever is more convenient for you. Okay, now I'm just gonna roughly approximate. We're not going to duplicate this exactly, we're going to come close to it. Okay, I'm going to make that the same size. Now I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode. Okay, over here we have the X-ray icon. You click that, you can see through your object, right? I'm going to hit 1 to go into front mode. Now if we have X-ray off, if I hit B to select, right, it's going to group select, and I select all these vertices, I've only selected the vertices in front. And every now and then I still forget, and I do this by accident, and I scale it, and look, I created a mess. You don't want to do that. So I'm gonna left click on the background to deselect everything. Gonna go into X-ray mode again, hit B to group select. Now I've selected the front and back vertices. I'm going to hit X to bring up this menu, which I'm going to delete the vertices. Now all we have is this little U shape, which is cool. That's all we want. So I'm going to hit A to select everything, right? That's just selecting all these vertices because we're in edit mode. In edit mode, it will only affect the object that you're editing. It won't affect anything in this because we're not editing this object, we're only editing this. So now I'm going to hit E to extrude. Left click on the background. Now we've extruded this object, but you can't see because we haven't moved it. So I'm going to hit S to scale, and I'm just going to slide that in. But as you can see, I'm going to turn that off real quick. What we've done is we've scaled it in the Y direction as well as in the X direction. So we want to take care of that, right? Because we want a nice flat object. So I'm going to hit 3 to go into side mode. We're going to turn on X-ray again. Now there's several ways we can fix this. We could hit S for scale and Y on the keyboard to do it that way. And we could come pretty close, right? We could actually come dead on, but it's easier, right? I'm going to scale that back. To make sure you're 100% flat, I'm going to hit B to group select, and I'm going to select all those vertices on the back, right? Now I'm going to hit scale Y to constrain my scale to the Y axis, and 0 on the numpad. Now that is dead flat. All of those vertices are on the same plane. And I'm going to do the same thing for the back. Hit B to group select, S for scale, Y, and 0 on the numpad, and enter. However, while this will make your object dead flat, is what we'll also do is it will change the thickness, because it just sort of brings one vertices to the same level as the other. So it's now, instead of 5, we're 464. So I'm just going to go in here and hit 5 on the numpad and enter, and now my object is 5 millimeters thick again. So 1 on the numpad to go to front view, tab to go back into edit mode, hit the X-ray button so we can see through, and I'm going to deselect that. Now I'm going to angle it slightly, and I'm going to hit Alt Shift left mouse button to select all those vertices, Alt Shift left mouse button to select those back vertices. So now we have all those vertices selected. 1 on the numpad, and I'm just going to drag them up. Now this is where your calipers would come in handy, because you want this curve to match whatever the curve of the cardboard tube or the PVC tube that you're using, right? It can be a little bit bigger, but you want it close to the same size. Let's say you have a, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a number, a 2-inch tube. You would want this to be about 2 1/4. A little bit bigger is fine, just so it moves freely. Too tight and your tube might not move. Although the tube will rotate on the tube, but you want to be able to get the tube in and out easily when you're changing your filament. So I like it. I like this shape to be a little bit bigger than my actual tube, so it spins freely. Now I want to flatten these out, so I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to get my group selection, and then I'm going to hit S for scale, Z, and 0 on my numpad. Now, while I got this selected, let's hit E and then left click on the background and just drag that up, right? That's how we got that. Easy peasy. Okay, now we're going to learn a new tool. This right here is your loop cut tool. Now, depending upon how you approach it with the loop cut tool is where it will make the loop cut. See, this is making a loop cut on the side. This is making a loop cut on the front, and that's, in this particular case, what we want. So we're going to left click but hold, not click and release. As long as you hold it down, now you drag it, and it's just sliding that loop cut forward and back. And in this case, why you want to do that is, let's just do that and I'll show you. Okay, so we're going to slide it to about where I think I want it. I'm going to let go. Now if I go back to the move, right, and I do that by hand, see how it's acting differently. It's moving them, but it's not sliding it, so it's changing the object as I move it. So that's why you want to do that. Let's hit Z, because I think yeah, there we go. Now I might scale that up a little bit. Now we got to fix all that. SZ0. And see, those are a little bit in front and back. Now, if they're a little bit in front, that's fine. I was going to print this with this part laying down flat on the bed, so you definitely want that flat. So I'm going to hit B to group select. S, Y, 0 on the numpad. We'll do the same thing on the front because I like things neat and orderly. S for scale, Y to constrain to the Y axis, 0. And now I'll go back and I'll make sure we're at 5 millimeters. And it doesn't really matter. It could be 515. I just like nice round numbers. That's just the kind of guy I am. Okay, so now we're going to go back in here. I'm going to Shift, Alt, left mouse button to select that line of vertices. And you got to click right on the line, right? Shift, Alt, left click. Now in this case, we've selected some of the back vertices. So I'll hit 3 on the numpad to get the side view, B, and this time I'm going to hold down the Shift key while I group select the back vertices, and it will deselect them. Okay, I'm going to turn off X-ray just so it's a little easier for you to see, right? We've got just the front vertices selected, and I'm going to hit E to extrude, left click with my mouse on the background, and then just pull that out. Right, that's a little too far. Okay, and now I'm going to hit B. I'm going to hit X-ray first just to make sure I get some of these vertices. I get all of the vertices. I'm going to hit B, and I guess we'll do it from about there. Then we're going to hit, I'll turn off X-ray just so it's easier for you to see. I'm going to hit E to extrude, left click on the background, and then just drag it out. So now that we've extruded that, we're going to zoom in a little. We're going to Shift Alt left click on that to deselect it, and then I'm just going to Shift left click on these individual vertices to deselect them. I'm just going to move this up a little bit. I'm going to Shift left click on those to select them, hit 1 on the numpad, and then hit S for scale, X to constrain to the X axis, and bring it in a little bit. Right? That's how we've created that little effect right there. Now, I'm going to match these holes, which I believe is 3 millimeters. I'm going to add mesh cylinder, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go 3, I don't know, 20. Then I'm going to hit 3 to go into side view, R, and then 90 to rotate it. The view that you're looking at an object on is the view that it will rotate it on. If I go 7 for a top view and I hit R, 90, it'll rotate it sideways. Now, 3 millimeters is roughly the size of the screw that I used. These are where your calipers come in handy. You want to know how big your screw is. And once again, make sure you cut the hole just a little bit bigger than your screw. And as you can see here, we don't have a lot of room between the edge and the edge here. We could probably get away with this. It looks like enough room, but here's the funny thing about 3D modeling. Since there's nothing really to give you size, sometimes you can get lost in the model and forget what you're dealing with. So how much room is actually between here and here? Now there is a measuring tool. I don't know, I don't really like to use it. What I'll do is I'll shift right click to bring my mouse, to bring my 3D cursor in there. I'll go add, mesh, cube, and then I'll go in here and I'll type 4 to reduce it down. So now if I go scale, I can see how much room. If I rotate that, now I can see how much. Now that's a little over 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters is not a lot of space. A lot of times I will keep my digital caliper around and I'll just open it up to 2 millimeters to see how much space that is in real life. And you might be able to get away with that, but I would be a little more comfortable leaving a little more room. So what we're going to do is tab to go back into edit mode. You always select the item, then hit tab, and I'm going to shift alt left click, shift alt left click, and you really got to get in there and click on the actual edge to get the whole edge. All right, and then you just double check sometimes to make sure. So now that we did that, I'm just going to hit scale to make it bigger. Right? And that looks like about big enough. Hit the X-ray icon to go back into X-ray mode. Click once on the background to deselect everything. And then select the top. Hit S for scale, Z for to constrain the scale to the Z axis, and 0 to flatten that out. Now we'll go into the side view. Select the back vertices, hit S for scale, Y to constrain it to the Y axis, Z on the numpad to flatten that out. Now it did also move these. Since we're going to print this with this flat to the bed, it doesn't really matter if this is bowed out a little bit. But if that concerns you, just hit Shift, Alt, and left click on that edge to select it. Hit 3 on the numpad to go into side mode. And a lot of times what I'll want to do is this you can just do by eye because it's not really that important. All right, we'll just line it up with that. If you hit X to go in the X-ray mode, you'll be able to see the line. Now that's probably not 100% flat, but don't forget we're dealing with such tiny increments. See, it's a little off, but this is such a tiny fraction of a millimeter that you won't even notice it. If you want to be picky, you can do that. You can also deselect this if you just select those vertices in the center, hit S for scale, Y to constrain to the y-axis, and 0, it will 100% flatten them out. Okay, now we've got some room in there, right? That's probably, let's see. Oops, we missed one axis. So if we're going to put that around the middle, right, that's probably about 3 millimeters away from the edge, give or take. That's probably close enough. Although, keep in mind that if you do have a screw with a head on it, you want to leave enough room between here and here so that the head will fit. So you might want to move it a little farther. Okay, don't forget to delete your measurement cube, which is why a lot of people say, oh, it's easier to use this, it's easier to use this. Maybe it is, I don't know. Okay, so now let's make our first cut. Okay, we're going to put this approximately where we want it, and the exact point of these screw holes, you know, you just want to support the brackets, right? So like I did here, I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably could have gotten away with 1, 2, 3. I like to put extra holes in, and then you can use or not use them as the need presents itself. Okay, so here we've got our model, and we've got our object we're going to use to cut a hole for the screw. Select the model, and then come over here. This little wrench is your modifiers. Click on the modifiers and go to boolean. Now in here we have some options. Deference is the one which will use this cylinder to cut the hole out of this object. Union will obviously join the two. Intersect I almost never use. Honestly, I forget what it does. I never use it. Maybe it has its purposes, but in all my modeling, I've never found one. Okay, so we've got the item we want to cut a hole in selected. Deference is selected. I'm going to click on fast. I explain what the exact modifier is. You can use it to cut normal holes, but it's not really meant for that. The Boolean modifier has gotten a lot better in the current version. Even in 2.83, I've had very little problems using the Boolean modifier to cut holes or to cut objects. So if you do run into a problem, it probably means that your model is not manifold. I have another video on that. Check that one out to see how you identify that issue and how to fix it. But in this case, we're just going to cut the hole. So we have difference, we have fast, then you just use the eyedropper tool. It's the easiest way to do it, especially if you have a lot of objects. However, we only have 3 objects in this, but we didn't name them. So if I go over here and I select the cylinder, you see it's highlighted over here. These are the 3 objects in our file. If you were to name this cutter, so you could easily identify it, name this, let's say, bracket 2 for the one we're working on, and we'll name this bracket 1. Now if we select this model, we have deference, we have fast selected, and we just click in that field, the cutter comes up. But you can also select the eyedropper and just select the item you want to use. If you had 50 items in here, I find the eyedropper tool is just easier than scrolling through a long list of items, but do it however you like. Now we just go to this little arrow and we select apply. And that's all there really is to this. It's now cut a hole. And you would do that for all the holes you want to cut. Right? I will do this one next so that these two are on the same line. You know, they're on the same level. Do the same thing. Select the item you want to cut. Go to modifier, boolean. Make sure it's on difference, fast. Use the eyedropper. Select the item. It'll pop up in there. Hit the down arrow, apply, and you've selected it. I mean, you've cut a hole. I'm going to move this down here. Select the object. Go to boolean, difference, fast. Select the object to cut. Hit apply, and we're good. Now you basically finished your first model in Blender. Now I'm going to delete this one because anything you leave in here will become part of the STL. So I like to just leave just the model that I want. Now I'm going to select the entire model. I'm going to hit R to rotate and 90. I'm going to move it down. I like to center things. Now this is how we're going to 3D print this object. So I will go now to File, Export, STL, and then I will just dry bracket STL. Export STL. Now that file is ready to bring into Cura and print out. You've just completed your first model. Okay, and here you can actually see the printed dry box bracket in action.